Dear listeners, I wonder where in the world you are listening to our story at this very moment. Today, let's step into a story of love, betrayal, and revenge. The golden fall sun pours in through the dining room window as William prepares to leave for work. His wife, Emma, had already prepared breakfast for him, a daily habit they had maintained since their marriage. I prepared your favorite sandwiches today, Emma said as she organized her lesson plan. I'll be back early in the evening so we can make dinner together. William smiled and gave her a soft kiss on the cheek. Such early morning hours were the most precious moments of their 8 years of married life. As the lead electrician at Bright Electric, William earned the respect of his coworkers. Despite his intense work schedule, he always put his family first. They met in college when William was pursuing a degree in electrical engineering and Emma was enrolled in the sociology department. At the time, they were just ordinary alumni, and it wasn't until they reunited at a friend's party a few years later that the two were drawn to each other. William admires Emma's subtlety and grace, while Emma is impressed by William's fortitude and tenderness. After their marriage, they moved into this house with a small garden. At weekends, William often mows the lawn, while Emma enjoys growing a variety of herbs in the garden. The days were calm and beautiful, and their marriage was like a soothing serenade, quiet and harmonious. William was gifted. Years of working as an electrician had kept him solidly muscled, and his short, well-groomed blonde hair and bright blue eyes gave him a masculine aura. In contrast, Emma is tall and elegant, with shoulder-length black hair that accentuates her intellectual temperament and exudes the elegance that a professor should have in her demeanor. As an associate professor in the sociology department, Emma is highly respected at the university. Her classes are always packed, and students are drawn to her rigorous teaching methods and approachable personality. Whenever Emma shared teaching anecdotes at dinner time, William always listened intently, proud of his wife's accomplishments. However, this quiet life begins to take a subtle turn. That night, Emma came home looking extra excited. "The department set me up with a new teaching assistant," she said as she prepared dinner. "His name is Oliver, and he's a promising graduate student who'll be just the thing to help me with that big class." At first, Oliver's presence does seem to help Emma's work. She often mentions how Oliver helps her with grading assignments and organizing her teaching materials. But over time, William noticed some subtle changes. Emma began to mention Oliver more frequently. "Oliver helped me rearrange my office hours today. Oliver suggested a new teaching method I could try, and even popped the TA's name up at the weekend breakfast table." Their lives began to change quietly. Emma gradually worked more and more often, and those dinner times that had been thunderous were now often postponed due to teaching duties. Sometimes William calls the office and there is always no answer. "There's been a lot of stress at work lately," she always explains, "and a final paper defense to prepare for." William tries to understand the pressures of his wife's job and takes it upon himself to take on more household chores in the hope of sharing some of Emma's stress. Whenever she came home late, he made sure a hot dinner was waiting for her. But even so, the distance between them seemed to be widening. The weekends have been different. Once upon a time, they always went shopping together at the supermarket or barbecued in the garden and invited a few close friends for a small gathering. Now, Emma often stayed in her study on the pretext that she had to correct her homework. Even when she goes out shopping, she is always distracted. Once, while they were shopping at the supermarket, Emma's cell phone suddenly rang. She quickly stepped aside to answer it, her voice so soft it was barely audible. When William inquired, she simply said it was work, but the nervous look on her face at that moment is etched in William's memory. The change happened in late fall. The other day, Emma mentioned an academic symposium in Cincinnati. "This seminar is important for my career development," she said with unusual excitement in her tone. "There will be a lot of well-known scholars attending. Do you need me to take some time off work to go with you?" William asked, thoughtful as usual. Emma reacted surprisingly strongly, but then moderated her tone. "I mean, no. The schedule is packed, and we don't get much time together." She paused. "We can save our vacation until spring and go on vacation together then." The reaction confused William. At similar gatherings in the past, Emma had gladly accepted his company. Even if each is busy during the day, it's comforting to have dinner together in the evening. The sudden rejection stirred a wave of unease in his mind. Over the next few days, Emma began to talk about the workshop frequently. She started packing earlier than usual and even acquired a new suitcase. Even more disturbing, she began locking some of her personal belongings in the closet, something that had never happened before. "Just some teaching materials and personal notes," she replied softly when William inquired. "You know, I've always been very private." But she always seemed unusually nervous whenever William approached her closet. At one point, he inadvertently touched the handle of the closet and Emma practically jumped up to stop him. This reaction was unusual for her, who was always calm and collected. Late at night, when Emma had long since gone to bed, William often lay in bed, contemplating the subtle changes. The conversations between them became less and less frequent, and even when they were in the same room, it was as if they were separated by an invisible wall. The Emma who would always leave a light on for him when he was working late now seemed to be immersed in her own world. When Emma finally departed for Cincinnati, she seemed incredibly excited. Before the trip, she checked her luggage again with an anxiety William had never seen before. "I'm going to miss you," she whispered from the doorway, but her eyes didn't meet his. At the moment he sends his wife off, William, standing in the empty house, has no idea that this brief goodbye will reveal a shocking secret. The subtle incongruities, the anomalies that he has been unconsciously ignoring, that will be woven into a web of heartbreaking truths in the days to come. The morning after dropping off Emma, William notices something unusual. Emma, who is always organized, was unusually careless today. She double-checked her bags and even forgot to lock her closet before leaving. This perverse action, in retrospect, turned out to be an important turning point in fate. Back at the empty house, William tries to focus on his work, but Emma's averted eyes and erratic behavior before she left always haunts him. In the evening, he decided to organize his study, hoping for a distraction. As he was organizing his desk drawer, a small ticket from Chandler's stationery caught his eye. This small ticket shows the purchase of a red leather journal, dated just as Emma begins to prepare for the workshop. It reminded him of Emma's unusual protectiveness over the red notebook lately. With a hint of unease, William walked toward the master bedroom. Emma had kept her diary locked away in her private closet, an unspoken agreement they'd had for years. Today, however, perhaps because I was in a hurry to get out of the house, the red book was sitting on the dresser. William's hands shook slightly as he picked up the journal. In 8 years of marriage, he never went through his wife's personal belongings. But at the moment, a strong feeling of foreboding drove him to scrutinize this diary. However, the diary was locked. William remembers sorting through some old things when he moved, which may have included Emma's old diary. Following his memory, he walked towards the study, checking every cabinet. In the closet in the far corner, he found a dusty shoebox. William held his breath as he opened the shoebox. Inside were neatly arranged 6 identical red leather journals, each with a small white circle printed on the spine labeled with a number from 1 to 6. Looking at the journals, he realized they all came from the same Chandler's stationery store. What's more, at the bottom of the shoebox, he found a small envelope containing the original key. Returning to his seat in the study, William took a deep breath and inserted the key into the latest journal. When the latch opened, his heart beat so fast it almost jumped out of his chest. The first few pages of the diary continued to be about their family life, Emma's passion for teaching, her hopes for their future together. But as he turned the pages, the contents began to make his hands shake uncontrollably. "Oliver came to my office for the first time today," the diary reads, "and the new assistant coach is younger and more attractive than I expected. I was impressed with his professionalism. For some reason, I'd love to know more about him." The next diary entry pierced him like a sharp knife. "Oliver always comes to the office in the afternoon when there are no classes. Today, when everyone had left, he closed the door. I knew I should have stopped him, but I felt both nervous and excited. The feeling scares me, but I can't fight it." William stood up and walked towards the kitchen to pour himself a glass of whiskey. The burning sensation of the alcohol restored his sobriety a little, but the pain inside was clearer. He recalled all the anomalies that had occurred over the past few months. Emma's postponed dinners, the mysterious phone calls, the unusual obsession with the Cincinnati seminar. Now everything is explained. Back in his study, he forced himself to keep reading. The diary details how the affair developed from an initial casual encounter to a deliberate arrangement. Every page felt like a blow to their marriage. Oliver said today that he's in love with me. It's crazy, and I know it's wrong, but every time I see him, my heart beats wildly and uncontrollably. I never thought it would happen, but now I find myself thinking about him all the time. William almost choked when reading the account of the seminar. In adjoining rooms at the Sheraton Hotel, Oliver and I were able to spend 3 days together. I know it's risky, but I can't stop anymore. Putting down his journal, William walked over to the window. The streetlights looked lonely in the night. He needed more evidence, hard evidence. After a night of deep thought, he decided to seek professional help. Early the next morning, he began searching online for local detective agencies. He carefully compared the reviews and services of several companies, and ultimately chose Pierce Investigations, which had the best reputation. When he dialed, William sounded unusually calm. "Do you accept cases for extramarital affair investigations?" The operator quickly transferred him to an experienced detective. "My name is Frank, and I've been in the business for 20 years. Can you elaborate on your situation?" William gave a brief explanation of the situation, specifically mentioning specific information about the hotel. Frank took careful notes and then created a detailed plan. "We can install hidden camera equipment at the hotel," Frank explains, "and we have an experienced team that can make sure everything goes undetected. The cost is $8,000, including equipment installation and photographic evidence." While waiting for the detective to make his move, William continued to study the diary. He discovers that Emma has recorded all the details, including how she met Oliver, what they talked about, and even those hidden feelings. With these words, he begins to piece together a complete picture of Oliver, a young, calculating man who is adept at using his job to facilitate his approach to married women. In order not to arouse suspicion, William maintains a normal life routine, getting to work on time, talking to coworkers, and even calling Emma at night. Every time he talked, he felt a pang of revulsion at the tone of excitement she couldn't hide. William's last glimmer of hope is dashed when Frank passes along the first batch of surveillance photos. The photos clearly capture Emma and Oliver intimately walking in and out of the hotel together, fully immersed in their world as a duo. That night, William sat in his study with his journals and photographs spread out in front of him, remembering their first date, Emma's bright smile at their wedding, the life they'd built together over the years. All those fond memories, now tainted by betrayal. Examining the file, he discovers an important detail, that Oliver's address is recorded in the contents of an appointment. The message seemed like destiny, and William took careful note of the address. As the evidence accumulates, a strange calm begins to grip William. It's not a release, it's the calm before the storm. He began to record his plans in a new notebook. Every detail must be perfect, every step precise. He began to list the things that needed to be prepared: handling the bank account, preparing the necessary equipment, planning the route. His experience as an electrician gave him in-depth knowledge of how to avoid surveillance and how to move without leaving a trace. Those years of work experience now became his advantage. Late at night, as he closed the last of his journals, there was thunder in the distance. The storm was coming, like the anger that was about to erupt inside him. Tomorrow, he was going to start executing the plan. Now he just had to wait for the right moment. The rain began to pound on the window panes and William stood in front of the window, looking out at the dark night sky. He knew this plan would change their lives forever, but at this point, there was no turning back. On this sleepless night, there was only one thought left in his mind: that everything would end in the final act. The next morning, after discovering the truth, William wakes up early to begin executing his plan. Last night's insomnia had left his mind unusually clear, and he knew that every next step had to be done with care and precision. The first step is financial preparation. William drove to a bank branch on the outskirts of town, a considered choice, far enough away from the neighborhood where they lived that the staff wouldn't recognize him and could avoid unnecessary hassles. "I need to make a cash withdrawal from a joint account," he said calmly to the teller, "in the amount of $8,000. Faced with a routine inquiry from the teller, he was prepared. The money was for a deposit on a home renovation. As he waited for his withdrawal, William thought back carefully to his conversation with Frank last night. This experienced private investigator advised him to diversify his funds and recommended some safe ways to handle the situation. After leaving the first bank, he traveled to another branch and withdrew $4,000 from his personal account. Around noon, William buys a prepaid cell phone at an out-of-the-way electronics store. Ask for the most basic kind, he told the clerk, just the calling and texting capabilities. He paid in cash, making sure to leave no trace. When he got home, Frank sent the first detailed surveillance report. It turns out the experienced detective contacted his inside man at the Sheraton, a night security supervisor, as soon as he was commissioned. This inside source helped them install miniature cameras in the corridors of the target rooms and in adjacent common areas. Our equipment is specially treated, Frank explains over the phone, and unless the location is known in advance, it's very difficult to detect. And we only monitor in legal public areas. At 3 p.m., new photos came in. Frank's team snapped Emma and Oliver meeting in a hotel lobby, where the two acted close and didn't shy away from others at all. Particularly piercing was the familiar smile on Emma's face, the one that had once belonged only to him. Then they went to the hotel cafe, Frank added, and our people gathered part of the conversation at the next table. They were discussing plans for the weekend. This information made William even more determined to take action. He began to plan his next step. First, he needs to do some recon on Oliver's residence. According to the address recorded in the diary, it was an apartment building located in a university district. At 6 o'clock in the evening, William drove to the target location. He deliberately chose dinner time, a time when people were too busy eating to notice the arrival of strangers. He found an adjacent parking space first, then pretended to be a passerby walking his dog and slowly walked around the apartment building. The apartment's security was as rudimentary as he'd expected an old access control system, a few security cameras, but all with obvious blind spots. As an experienced electrician, William easily found the weak points in these facilities. He detailed every detail in a cell phone memo: the location of the cameras, the range of blind spots, the model of the access control system. Just then, Frank sent a new photo. This time it's Emma and Oliver having dinner at the hotel restaurant. They made reservations for dinner tomorrow, the text message said, and it looks like it's becoming a regular arrangement. When he got home, William began to organize the information he had gathered. He divides the cash into portions, each in a different envelope, and labels them with their purpose: travel, lodging, emergency funds. He purposely sets aside a portion of his cash for subsequent security expenditures that may be required. To ensure the security of his communications, he began using his newly purchased prepaid cell phone to contact Frank. The phone was used only to contact detectives, while his personal cell phone was kept in normal use so as not to arouse suspicion. Emma called at 8 p.m. on the dot. "Today's seminar was great," she said, her voice full of enthusiasm. "And I met a lot of interesting scholars." "Sounds good." William's tone was so calm he surprised even himself. "Have fun?" After hanging up, he continued to refine the details of his plan. According to information provided by Frank, Emma and Oliver have a regular schedule: mornings at the seminar venue, the start of their private time in the afternoon, and dinner in the evening. This fixed pattern worked well for his plan. The first thing William did when he woke up the next morning was to check the latest report Frank had sent last night. The detective team found Emma and Oliver returning to their room together in the early hours of the morning on security footage from the hotel lobby. The photos accompanying the report clearly show their intimate demeanor. In the morning, William again went to the Oliver apartment area, this time posing as a courier, and scrutinized the way the apartment door opened and the location of the mailbox. All of this information was recorded in a special notebook that he labeled with a special code to prevent it from being read by others. At noon, he stopped at a stationery store. "I need a red notebook that looks exactly like this one," he said, showing the photo to the clerk. When the clerk found a laptop of the same style, he matched it with a matching key. These items will come in handy in the final phase of the program. In the afternoon, new evidence came in. Frank's team caught Emma and Oliver on a date at the hotel's indoor pool. "Our people dress up as tourists," Frank explains, "so that they can naturally access the various areas." The two were photographed behaving intimately and completely immersed in their world as a couple. This new evidence is weighing heavier and heavier on William's mind. He began to draw a detailed roadmap of his actions in his notebook, labeling the actions that needed to be taken at each critical moment. His experience as an electrician has given him an intimate knowledge of building structures, an expertise that will help him break through various security measures. In the afternoon, William heads to an outdoor store on the other side of town to pick up a few essentials. All purchases are paid in cash to avoid leaving traceable electronic records. When he got home, he began to make final preparations for the operation. He scrutinizes all the evidence, photographs, diary excerpts, a roadmap of the operation, making sure every detail is perfect. The clock was pointing to midnight, but his mind was still unusually clear. In the light of the din, William views the photo one last time. All of the images provided by Frank's team clearly document the evidence of betrayal. Emma looked so happy in the pictures, that happy expression long gone when she faced him. Outside the window, dark clouds once again enveloped the city, as if foreshadowing the coming storm. William turned off the lamp and sat quietly in the darkness. He knew that tomorrow was the day of action, and now he needed to keep a cool head and prepare for what was to come. By the time the first rays of sunlight hit the room on the third morning, William was completely ready. He checked all the details. The funds had been properly allocated, the route had been double-checked, and the required items were in their proper places. Now it's just a matter of waiting for one last sign. Confirmation from Frank that Emma and Oliver are on their way today. It was unusually quiet this early morning, as if the whole world was waiting with bated breath for what was about to happen. William stood in front of the window, staring at the rising sun, and was surprisingly calm. He knows that when this sun rises again, nothing will ever be the same again. William woke up at 4 a.m. on the day of the operation and went through all the items he had prepared one last time. Sorted envelopes of cash, a newly purchased laptop, a set of tools, spare clothing, and other necessities. Each item is carefully placed in a different location in the trunk of the car for immediate access when needed. He had deliberately chosen a dark waterproof jacket, a style he never normally wore. Just in case, he has 2 other different styles of clothing for subsequent trips. At 5:30 a.m., he sent Frank a final confirmation. A reply was quickly received, target schedule confirmed. The workshop starts at 9 o'clock and ends at 2 p.m. They'll meet at the hotel afterward, and dinner is at 7 o'clock. The target usually returns to his residence at 9:30. This schedule fits perfectly with William's plan. Based on his observations and the information provided by Frank, Oliver's routine is very regular, which makes the execution of the whole program more secure. At 6 a.m. sharp, William began to move as planned. First, he needed to make sure his movements were not tracked. He drove through the city, purposely choosing several routes without security cameras. The routes had been surveyed over and over before, and he had memorized every turn and fork in the road. At 7 a.m., he stopped for breakfast at a cafe 3 blocks from Oliver's apartment. The restaurant had no surveillance equipment, and the patrons were so busy catching up on their morning shifts that no one would notice a stranger dining alone. At 8:30, Frank sent the first real-time message. The target has arrived at the location and is talking to your wife. Seems to be in a good mood. William silently takes the last sip of his coffee and prepares to get started. From 9 in the morning to 12 at noon, he moved around the different corners of the city on a schedule, making sure to establish an alibi. He went to the hardware store to buy some common tools, lingered in the bookstore for a while, and even went to the supermarket to buy some daily necessities. All purchases are paid in cash to avoid leaving an electronic record. At 12 noon, he arrived at a pre-selected coffee shop. The store sloped down to Oliver's apartment, but the entrance to the apartment was not visible from the store, which was exactly what he needed, a seemingly ordinary but close stopping point to his target location. He needed a landing spot that appeared to be both normal and close to the target location. Frank's update came on time. 2 p.m. The meeting is over. The target and your wife have left the meeting and are on their way to the hotel. This message means the time for action has come. William gets up and leaves the coffee shop and walks to his car. As the sun shone into the hotel room on Saturday morning, Emma began to pack her bags. She tried unsuccessfully to contact William last night, but received a text from him this morning saying he was in town helping out and wouldn't be home until this afternoon. The news was a relief. At least she had time to organize herself. She looked at her phone. Oliver hadn't responded to her messages since last night. It was counterintuitive because he was always quick to reply, but she thought he might be busy with something else. After all, they had arranged to meet at the school the following week. On the way home, Emma had mixed feelings. The days of the seminar had given her a thrill she had never known before, but with it came a deep sense of guilt. As she passes a coffee shop, she remembers the time she spent with Oliver, the stolen pleasures that now seem so dangerous. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Emma opened the door to her house. The house was surprisingly quiet, with only the ticking of the clock echoing. She noticed a note pressed next to the salt shaker on the kitchen table in William's handwriting, repeating the text message. She put away the note and began to unpack. Emma changed into her housecoat and prepared to document the day's events. Her red diary was on the kitchen table. Just as she was about to start writing, a shrill doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Outside the door stood two men, a young uniformed officer with his hand always near his holster, and a middle-aged man in a suit with a serious look on his face. "I'm Detective Wade. This is Officer Scott." The man in the suit showed his badge. "We're looking for William. Is he home?" "William's at work." Emma tried to hide the uneasiness in her voice. "What happened?" "We'd better go inside and talk," Wade said, gesturing out into the cold wind. In the kitchen, Emma pours coffee for the officers. She noticed Wade surveying the room, his eyes lingering on her journal for a split second. "At 3 o'clock this morning," Wade said as he got right to the point, "we received a report of a case. The call came from your husband's cell phone." "There must be some kind of misunderstanding," Emma said. "I should call him to make sure." She takes out her cell phone and dials William's number, but the call goes straight to voicemail. "Let's talk about something else." Wade flipped to a new page in his notebook. "Do you know Oliver?" At the sound of the name, Emma blanched and clutched her coffee cup so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "Yes, he's my assistant coach, but William doesn't know him." "It seems your husband knows more than you think," Wade said. "He reported Oliver's death to the police." Those words hit Emma like a bolt from the blue. "It can't be. I saw him yesterday. How could?" Her voice began to tremble. Wade pulled a folder out of his briefcase. "When we arrived at the scene, we found obvious signs of a struggle. The coroner's preliminary time of death was between 6 and 8 o'clock last night. We found these at the scene." He puts 3 photos in front of Emma. Emma broke down as soon as she saw the picture. They were intimate photos of her and Oliver at the hotel, each one clearly documenting her betrayal. "No. Oh my God. How could William know?" Her tears began to well up. "According to state records," Wade continued, "your husband holds a license to use a .25 caliber handgun. The shell casings found at the scene matched that caliber exactly." That's when Wade's cell phone rang. The call was brief, but impactful. "Your husband's cell phone, credit cards, and a handgun were found near Niagara Falls, along with his license plate number. Looks like he got new license plates." The news completely crushed Emma, and her cries grew louder and louder as the harsh reality became clear and terrifying. Wade pulls out another photo, a close-up of a small brass key. "Do you recognize this?" Emma shuddered as she pulled her diary key out of her bag. Both keys were identical. "No," she whispered. "He knows all." Seeing Emma's state, Trooper Scott suggested contacting her family. Emma gave out her sister Isabel's phone number. Isabel has always been her biggest support, taking care of her since her college days, and now she only has her sister left to give support. While waiting for Isabel to arrive, the officers carefully record Emma's testimony. She spoke intermittently about the experiences of the last few days of the seminar, but was incoherent about what had happened before. Isabel arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Seeing her sister break down, she immediately understood that something serious had happened. Officers explained the situation to her and advised that Emma should not be left alone in the near future. As Wade and Scott walked toward the police car, the young officer asked, "Do you think you can catch him?" "Depending on how well he hides it," Wade said. "He's not the type of serial killer who will continue to commit crimes and will likely avoid attention. It's going to be hard to find him unless we launch a nationwide manhunt." "What do you think about the cell phone thing?" Scott was thoughtful. "I believe Emma is telling the truth," Wade replied. Over the next few days, police expanded their search. They pulled every possible security camera, interviewed potential witnesses, and tracked down all suspicious bank transactions. But William just seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving no useful clues. The school soon learned about it. Emma had to apply for an extended leave of absence. She couldn't face the stares of her colleagues and students. Isabel moves in with her temporarily to help her through this difficult time. A week later, the police had to admit that the case might be unsolvable. Of all the evidence collected, the most striking was the Red Diary. Not only does it document the breakdown of a marriage, it serves as the trigger for this elaborate revenge scheme. The prosecutors explained their conclusions in detail to Emma. Based on the evidence at the scene, this was a well-planned operation. Every detail was well thought out, and no traceable clues were left behind. Even the security cameras near Niagara Falls only show William's car passing by, but not him in person. Over time, this case became the talk of the local police after dinner. Some say William has left the country, others say he has reformed and started a new life. But only Emma knows that wherever he is, the once gentle and caring husband is gone forever. When Isabel helps Emma organize the house, she finds several photos of the couple together. The photo shows William with a warm smile and love for his wife in his eyes. These photos now seem more like a silent indictment of Emma. The police report on the case ended with the suspect's whereabouts unknown, but for Emma, it was never over. She was beginning to realize that the man she thought she knew was more complicated than she thought. She'll never know the pain William went through the night he read her diary. A few months later, Emma resigned from her position at the university. She couldn't continue to work in a place full of memories. That office, that podium, everything reminded her of how she had gone down the path of betrayal. Isabel helps her find a new job in another city in hopes that her sister can make a fresh start. Before leaving, Emma flipped through the red journal one last time. These words document her loss and bear witness to the collapse of a marriage. She finally realized that sometimes the scariest thing wasn't the loss, but the knowledge that it was all of her own making. And somewhere far away, William is probably starting a new life. He takes with him not only the evidence of her betrayal, but the gentle man she once knew. This well-planned revenge not only punishes the betrayer, but changes everyone's fate forever. In the police department's archives, the case file lies quietly on a shelf as another unsolved mystery. Thanks for listening to this story of emotional ups and downs. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching this video right now. What time is it? Let us know in the comments section. Good morning, good afternoon, or good night. And may you have a wonderful day. If you like this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Hope to see you again in the next story.